Peace family, Vie Darling, the Cosmic Queen, and your intergalactic interpreter. And I am here with a little cosmic tea. There are definitely some messages that want to come out. I know I haven't been on live in a while, but that's actually why I go on live like once or twice a week, so that I can like get everything that needs to be said out. Because there are messages on tap, but I'm taking a social media break, and that includes being on live. Because when I'm on live, I'm tapped into the energy of the collective, and the people in the live, like, I feel their energy the most, and that is, I'm fasting from all of that kind of stuff right now. So I just would encourage you, if you want to still receive weekly updates and insights, to become a member of the premium tier of my newsletter on Substack. It is called The Mysteries. The regular tier is called The Channel. I write personal essays and like give some life updates sometimes, but the premium tier is called The Mysteries, and it is an esoteric mysticism newsletter in which we deep dive into the mysteries based on the astrology and the energy that we are engaging with. So one thing I want to say is, I mean, it's $11.11 a month, but if you purchase a year-long annual membership, you get it for $100.11. So that's 2 free months. I think it's a really great deal. There's also a founder's membership. The information is going to be in the description box below. Another thing that I want to say is that, yeah, I don't actually remember what it was I was going to say. Oh, I just feel like there's a lot of like throat chakra stuff going on. There's a lot of purging that's going on. That much is definitely like for sure. And certain like words that have been coming up for me a lot in the ethers, I'm going to talk about those, but I also want to talk about this week's energy. This week's energy has been really trying. It's been really difficult for a lot of people. A lot of people are going through it, and I will say that this is a time of temptation from what I am observing in my life and the lives of my community. Like, I feel a lot of people are like absolutely burnt out, just like exhausted, emotionally, energetically, like spent. A lot of people are really hitting rock bottom, I would say, and that is showing up in our Venusian themes. So that includes like relationships, not just romantic relationships, but like business partnerships as well. I would say like interpersonal relationships definitely, like, but oh my goodness, hold on a second, y'all. there's like a lot of interference that I've been picking up on. There's a lot of chaotic energy. A lot of chaotic energy. And I definitely sense that this is due in part to the purgings that are happening. There's a lot of purging going on. It's like these seed points of the original seed point of these trauma timelines, these like karmic timelines. That is all being purged right now, and while it's being purged, you know, the sentient energies are definitely like fighting to remain in power. The thing is, they don't have authority, and 𝗂𝗍 𝗂𝗧 made a really great point, confirmation burp, on her, in one of her lives. I adore 𝗂𝗍. I think that she's like one of the realist readers. I mean, she doesn't consider herself a reader. I don't either. I'm seeing the word Fantasia. She's one of the realists. Let's just put it that way, you know, and she keeps it real and she speaks the truth. And even though people hate on her and like, you know, whatever else, she always keeps it real, and I really appreciate that. And that authenticity is how you know that she is a real one. It's not just about likes. It's not just about like what people think or how people perceive her. Like, she keeps it real. And 1044 on the clock, so I'm reading that as 144. Yeah, but she said in one of her lives that just because they have power doesn't mean that they have authority. You know, and we are all self-sovereign. It's just a matter of us remembering that and stepping into that, owning it, claiming it. We are all self-sovereign. Nobody is sovereign over us, okay? And this is important to remember. These energies, entities, and expressions of existence who want us to think that they have some sort of power over us, like that they have authority over us, that they have rank over us, They want us to think that because that's the only way that they can get us to do what they want. But we don't have to. And there are plenty of things that we can actively do to like make sure that their influence fails. So there are some other things I'm being taken to, but I do want to finish with that Venusian themes thing. So it's Venus. I feel like Mercury and the moon, and also Saturn. So the social planets have more to do with like our social lives, whereas our intimate lives are more so the territory of Venus. And anything that has to do really with like values. So that would be like money, that would be like our professional relationships, like business partnerships and stuff like that, anything that relates to like our money. So that also has to do with like 10th house stuff. We know that the 10th house is Capricorn, so it's ruled by Saturn. We're also thinking here about, so yeah, we're also thinking here about romantic relationships. That also has to do with Mars. And I'm gonna pull up the chart for today. I'm gonna look at the moon Capricorn when it enters the sign of Capricorn, because that's at 17:51 Greenwich Mean Time. That's 5:51. And so that's like midday Eastern Time, which means it's like 9 a.m. in, it's like 9 a.m. in like the Pacific time zone. But yeah, Mars is in the sign of Gemini. It's almost conjunct with Jupiter. And Fortune is here too. It's in the 5th house at this point. And Mars is going to be conjunct with Jupiter, I think tomorrow. I'm just checking. It's weird that that's not in my notes, because I mean, it may have already happened. Sorry, y'all. I'm a little bit slow today as well. I've been a little slow lately. It's definitely Mercury retrograde. So that is also part of like what's going on that's causing like this chaotic stuff. So like I had a flame burning and it was just like burning for so long, and I thought that it had gone out actually, and it just like started like really flaring up, and I was gonna let it go out on its own, but then it started like burning the surface that it was on. So I poured water on it and it like the fire blew up and then it went down, but like then like it just spilled a bunch of stuff on the floor, which is super annoying. Yeah, the sun is conjunct Mercury on the 19th. No, that's not what I'm looking for. Like, Mercury is definitely gonna be conjunct, or Mars is, excuse me. It's really frustrating. Jupiter on the 14th. Okay, so that happened yesterday. So this is why I felt like earlier this week, like things were about to start moving really fast. And like I felt like for a lot of people, our manifestations are actually going to be starting to come in a lot faster. Knight of Pentacles, yes, exactly. Like things are about to start moving like really quickly in terms of our money. And these Venusian themes that just seem to be affected, there's a lot of like chaotic energy in those spaces, I feel. But that could have to do with the fact that Venus is in the sign of Virgo. It is in fall in Virgo, and Venus is also locked in an opposition to Saturn, and it's going to be in opposition to Saturn for a little while, if I'm recalling correctly. It's at 13 degrees today in Virgo, which is the Virgin. And the chart I'm looking at, it's in the 8th house. This is the house of transformation and change. I think that this is really talking about like what we are allowing to come to us, like what we are attracting through our habits, and with it opposing Saturn retrograde in the 2nd house in Pisces. Yeah, it's really about like our relationship to the universe, macrocosmic, really, and to consciousness and like the ethers, you know. And this is really about getting right in the ethers, and because it's Saturn retrograde, it's about like what are we doing? What are our karmic patterns, you know? And so there has been a lot that has been coming up around like the like family of origin more so than the community of origin. But it's like, it's tough because it's like we have to look at our own patterns and identify like, what am I doing that is continuing to like bring these cycles into my life? And that's why I said like I feel like we're really hitting bottom right now. And so if you are finding that like your money is like really fucked up right now, that is potentially because like having access to resources to be able to have like certain control in your life like allows you to ignore like systemic issues in your life, in your personal systems, okay? So like wherever you're feeling trapped, wherever you're feeling stuck, that's where you need to be looking. When I had started this video and then I like felt at a loss for information, so I decided to like just tune in a little bit more and stop and just like listen to what, see, Ace of Wands in reverse, trapped energy, like you're not moving forward. And it is retrograde season. This is the thing that people who only know about pop astrology like don't understand, is like their retrograde season happens every summer. Every single summer. This is part of why I don't understand why people love summer so much, because it's like the astrology of summer is trash. Like I hate summer so much. It is retrograde season. Saturn is retrograde. Neptune is retrograde. Pluto is retrograde. Like right now. It's not always. I don't think it's always every year retrograde. Like Venus is a year and a half between, but like of course we have a Mercury retrograde during the summer. We have Cancer season, which is just like the feels are not fun, if I can say it like that. And it's just like such an emotional time, and it's such a time of going in, like within, really, that I just like, I know that like Gemini season and Leo season might make us feel like very social, but to me it's just like an extreme in the masculine like realms of our life and our energy, and like winter is an extreme in the feminine realms of our lives and in our energy. And I'm personally not a fan of either. Frankly, I don't like extremes. I much prefer like moderate everything, like balanced, chill, like we don't need to get hype and extra. But a lot of us have that issue where like we operate in extremes, and this is because I'm having like big deja vu right now. This is because we've been indoctrinated to be extreme, to see in black or white thinking. And it's not even black and white, it's just black or white thinking. And that is actually a trait that psychologists use to determine if somebody has a personality disorder, is black or white thinking. And it is a problem because it means that like we're not operating from the sophisticated parts of our brain, failing to understand that life is spectral. Okay, when you're operating from black or white thinking, that's two-dimensional thinking. Let's think of it this way. One dimension is a dot. Two dimension is a line. In terms of time, I'm thinking in terms of time. Let me shift here. One dimension is a line, flat, right? Two dimensions, that's like length and width. So let's say we have a triangle. Or, yeah, we'll say that we have a triangle because I think that will, I want to say triangle. That's what I'm saying, is I want to say triangle. And then 3 dimensions is a pyramid. That's a tetrahedron, right? So that's length. Then we have length times width. And then we have length times width times depth. A lot of people just don't want to deal with depth because that's just too much for most people. Most people prefer to keep it shallow and superficial. And I don't blame them because most people have not been given the tools to be able to go deep, deep sea diving. They haven't been equipped, they haven't been trained. Most people do not receive the instruction that they need throughout their lives to be able to help them to be able to do that kind of work and have the kind of discernment. In fact, most of the time we are socialized against discernment. And this is we're gonna talk about the powers that be, the demonic shadow empire. Of course, we're gonna talk about that because I do have some downloads to share about that. But it's really important to understand this, that when we are having black or white thinking, that's the triangle. First of all, we're already four-dimensional beings because of time. Although it used to be that physicists thought that the fourth dimension was time, and now it's not. It's a little bit like wonky. I just want to make sure that I am like using the proper language, because I want to say hyperspace. So time is still considered a fourth dimension for locating points in space-time, but I believe what it is referred to as now is hyperspace. Yeah. And time exists like with that, but yeah, I don't want to say anything that's like not exactly right. So I would actually just go ahead and encourage you to like look that up. I have a playlist called Science is Cool, where I have like, okay, a tesseract. That's what it is. It's a tesseract. In terms of like, if you have a square, then you have a cube, then you have a tesseract. But I was using a tetrahedron, so they do consider it like the time. Either way, I feel like it's hyperspace is actually the word for it, but I'm also seeing tesseract. But I do have a playlist called Science is Cool. It has videos of physicists talking about quantum space and the cosmos and physics, and some of those videos are super, super easy to understand because they are from Crash Course Astronomy is really helpful for me when I was taking astronomy. So I think that they can be very helpful for you because they are made to help children understand. But I just really cannot remember the name of this right now, but we're talking about time essentially. When we're just operating from black or white thinking, that's two-dimensional thinking. Meanwhile, we are quantum physical beings. Like, you and I both know that we are not two-dimensional. You and I both know that we are not a flat cartoon drawing, you know? Like, we both know that, right? So it's time for folks to start adding depth to their considerations of things. Nothing is as simple as A or B, okay? It's Mercury retrograde. I'm gonna take this slower. I'm not gonna try and rush and like fill space. So I put a lot of videos on 1.5 speed. I would encourage you to also put it on 1.5 speed if you feel like you really like cannot slow down and be like patient and present, which is real. I get it. I have ADHD. That's why I have to put videos on 1.5 speed. But yeah, so when you operate from two-dimensional thinking, that is regressive, actually. And this is part of what I've been trying to express with this agenda to devolve our consciousness. And we are actively made to think us versus them, me versus the world. When in reality, and I think that I just want to make sure that I am naming this correctly. In the cosmic wellness practice, I have developed basically a structure that defines what colonialism is within the ideological system of the demonic shadow empire, which I term as colonialism. And I developed my structure from Andrea Smith, who is a Cherokee organizer and educator. I'm trying to open it. I've been referencing this lately. Open, I don't understand why you are not open. Okay, goodness gracious. But I have been unsure of if I was getting the title correct. So it's called Heteropatriarchy and the Three Pillars of White Supremacy: Rethinking Women of Color Organizing, by Andrea Smith, Cherokee intellectual, feminist, and anti-violence activist. And she talks about how different ethnic groups have been othered and marginalized in different ways as a means of keeping us stuck inside this idea of basically, I believe she might even be the first person to use, but I don't know, but this is the first time I've seen it in writing, the oppression Olympics term. This idea of well, we have to figure out, I have it worse, so you, or this person has it worse, and so I can't work with that person because or I can't work with this group because we went through this or we went through that. And it's really important to understand. She talks about how different ethnic groups have been marginalized in different ways in order to have a continuation of division and conflict amongst themselves, so they cannot come together in order to organize and overthrow, one, the cis heteropatriarchy, but two, the system of white domination, okay, and racism. So I will try and see if I can share. I have it as a PDF. I'll try and see if I can share it in the description, but I will put the title in the description so y'all can look this up yourselves. This is a text that I read in, I think, my first sociology course, first or second, I don't remember. But yeah, it's just she talks about how in America, it is the system and structure of America particularly, and we can say the Euro-American empire is buoyed up by slavery, which enforces capitalism, G-side, which enforces colonialism and keeps that going, and Orientalism, which enforces war. And how these separate things they're different. Honestly, they're different. And I don't find it actually helpful to be one is worse than the other. I just genuinely don't find that helpful. My spirit rejects that. Although we do know that there is a social stratification that is rooted in anti-Blackness, which actually is pervasive and predates traditional racism, because colorism predates Jeffersonian racism, let's call it. We know that is true, but it's not helpful for us to constantly be in conflict of well, they have it better, so I can't work with them to overthrow this system. We know this. It is a tactic of division, and that's on purpose. And while we're stuck in this black or white thinking, the people who created these structures are operating already, not even in just third dimension understanding, this is a way to keep these people stuck in this second dimension and stuck in their reptilian brain and stuck in conflict. And if you're stuck in conflict, you're stuck in a trauma response, you're stuck in survival mode. So you essentially are always going to be, you know, degrading your body. Ultimately, you will always be degrading your body because the stress chemicals such as cortisol, adrenaline, that like constantly being in that state degrades our organs, and it's a malfunctioning nervous system. Okay. Excuse me, I need to get my water bottle. And so, one thing that happens when we are developing consciousness, and I will keep it to social consciousness as an example. One thing that happens when we develop consciousness is we go from having a one-dimensional, two-dimensional understanding of the world. And when we learn context adds depth and weight, okay? And that's what makes it relate to us. There is a collective consciousness, a collective subconscious that is encoded in our DNA. This is something that Carl Jung, one of the fathers of Western psychological thought, and there in sociological thought, one of the, I would say, pioneers, Jungian psychology, taught, and he got that from indigenous teachings, okay? That's what makes it relative to us. That's what makes storytelling so powerful, because we can relate to it, right? When we progress to like third dimensional thinking, let's say, we get above the situation and above the context, and we can see it from a bird's eye view. This is really important to remember while Jupiter is in detriment in the sign of Gemini. I keep saying it's in detriment, but it might actually be in fall. When I was writing the insights, this kept happening to me as well. So once again, I am going to just double check, because I don't want to say things that are like not accurate. Yes, it's in detriment. So I also think that this is an important lesson. That is, if it keeps happening, I think it's an important lesson. Like, it's okay to not know. It's okay to say, I don't know. You know, it's okay to take time to consider your options. If you don't feel ready to move forward on a decision because you don't feel like you have enough information, that is okay. And it's important to not rush ourselves with that, okay? It's important to not rush ourselves with that. A lot of people who are insecure about their level of intelligence will meet somebody who is intelligent and be like, oh, you think you know everything. But true intelligence is being able to say, I don't know, because with that awareness, you're able to go and find out. True intelligence is curiosity. And that's what makes someone, like, curiosity is a characteristic of genius. Albert Einstein would have never been able to discover like the theory of relativity if he had not been curious, if he had not admitted to what he didn't know. And he was willing to be wrong 1,000,000 times. That's experimentation. So we're talking about Uranus and Aquarius. He was willing to be wrong 1,000,000 times. And this is why people who are not willing to say that they don't know, they're not willing to be wrong, they're not willing to make mistakes and learn from them, they tend to be, what society would define as a failure. you're not going to get very far if you're not if you have so much pride and egoism, overinflated pride. This has to do with Leo season, so this is definitely a Leo season message. If you have so much overinflated pride that you're not willing to be accountable to what you don't know and to your mistakes, and if you're not willing to at least, like, you know, and you can't get back up and try again if you're not even willing to admit that you fell down. You know? So this is very important for whatever reason, but I guess, yeah, because we are talking about like developing consciousness. So social consciousness, that is a term that is used in sociology, and I will speak to my experience. I grew up in a household that I was raised by Africans, so there wasn't a lot of talk about like Black American history or American history. Mainly what was talked about was like our own history in the country that, in my mother country. And, you know, of course there were like, we did listen to like some American music, but like the music that we grew up on was African music. The culture, that was the primary culture when I was a child. That's one dimension. Then this is why we say in sociology that the family is the first unit, the first institution of social indoctrination, socialization. Then I went out into the world, right? I started going to school. I was going to church. You know, I was going to after school care. And in that space, that's actually like the community is kind of like first, second, I'd say 1.5, because the second institution of indoctrination is media, which of course, like I said, like I was exposed to media as a kid, but it was controlled by the adults in my life. Okay, and when I was a little baby, my siblings were like teenagers, my eldest siblings, so that is a part of why like I did have an understanding of like American media. More so, I think, than a lot of other like first generation or immigrant Africans of my same age. And yeah, also my parents spent a lot of time in America, and they went to university in America. But then I went out into the world and I developed a larger social context, but it was not, a larger social context. I was able to see like the ways in which my experience was different from others. And folks will tell you, like, you'll hear this, you might relate to this. Sometimes it's like this idea of like what was normal in one's household, one goes out into the world and realizes that that's not necessarily normal. So you'll hear sometimes people will say like that they grew up not really having like a lot of money, maybe they were working class or poor, and they go out into the world and then they didn't realize that when they were young, and then like they start to go over to like their school friend's house or like whatever, and they realize like, oh, like there's a difference here, you know what I mean? And that develops this sense of otherness, that creates that like division in that sense of or, you know, us versus them, me or them, you know what I mean? Meanwhile, I say this all the time, the collective presupposes the individual. There cannot be an idea of an individual without there first being a collective, okay? And then when we develop social consciousness, so I didn't really understand American society. I considered myself apart from it, in it, but not of it, because that's how I was raised. And there was a lot of stuff that I just didn't learn in the house, and I didn't learn at school, you know? And so when like I was a senior in high school when Trayvon Martin happened, and when that happened, I was like, really upset. Really upset. I grew up most of my life, I grew up my whole life in the suburbs, actually. My whole childhood, rather. I've not lived in the suburbs as an adult. But yeah, and especially like where I spent most of my childhood was a very safe place, but it was also a planned community. Y'all have definitely heard me talk about this on this platform before. It was a planned community. So it was very idyllic. And it was also the most diverse place, one of the most diverse places in the country. And you would get beat up if you were racist. Like, people would beat you up if you were, like, overtly racist. But I didn't know about covert racism. I didn't know about classism. I didn't know a lot of things because I was a child. You know, I thought I was grown. I wasn't. I was a child. Teenagers are children, you know? And so when that happened, that was also the year that, like, my brother started showing me documentaries, like, about capitalism. She showed me Capitalism, A Love Story, Hidden Colors. Like, this was during Arab Spring. This was during Occupy Wall Street. So he was, like, showing me a lot of documentaries. And, like, also, because I grew up outside of DC, there was this culture of needing to be in the know about politics. Like, even on the TV in the lobby of my middle school, they played CNN. So, like, there was always, like, this need to be in the know about politics and neoliberal intellectualism. If you, like, have grown up in the suburb of a major city, like a close suburb of a major city, you probably know what I'm talking about. But neoliberal intellectualism, which is not actually progressive, and it's definitely not radical, it's just convoluted regurgitation of ideas that are not actually praxis whatsoever. So, yeah, I was being exposed to a lot of this information, and it was very activating for me. Because I started to have words for what I had been feeling all along, especially when I graduated and I went to university for the first time, and I moved to New York City. I was 17 years old. I came up that summer and lived with my grand aunt for a little bit and worked. And then I, like, started uni in that September, I guess. This was 2012. And yeah, I, like, was finally away from my community of origin. I wanted to leave there and never ever go back. I hated it. I was very much a black sheep, not just in, like, the family of origin, but also in the community of origin, because, like, I've spoken about this as well, like, the community that I grew up in was very wealthy. So there was definitely overt classism, but the racism more so was very much, like, under the surface. But I always wondered, like, why I felt, like, not accepted and not right. And, like, I couldn't be myself. And I actually, now I remember there were, like, now I've been able to, like, recover these memories of, like, overt racism that I experienced in, like, after school care and things like this. And, like, anti-indigeneity in terms of, like, anti-African sentiment and, like, these kinds of things. But, yeah, I think I, like, one, suppressed and repressed those memories, but two, I feel like I just didn't have words and I didn't understand what was going on. But obviously I internalized it because I knew that I wasn't safe, and I knew that, like, I had to code switch. I couldn't be one person, like, in the home. I was expected to be somebody different in different settings. And I had to wear a mask. That's what I learned. And I didn't have words for these things, but it just, like, my survival instinct knew to do that. You know what I mean? And that's because our brain is a part of our body. People tend to forget that. Our brain is a part of our body, and our body is really, really intelligent. Like, our bodies are very intelligent, more intelligent than we give them credit for. Oh, there's a fly in here. And more intelligent than our minds. You have to remember that our bodies are encoded with thousands, millions of years of evolutionary information from our ancestors and even proto-human, and our mind is pretty much, for the most part, just what we've picked up in this lifetime. One knows much more than the other. So when I got to university, I went to liberal arts schools and did fine art in liberal arts schools. So I had to take a lot of history and a lot of social sciences and things like this. And this was also a social revolution. An identity revolution was going on in society. If you were on social media at the time, you bore witness to this. And people were like, oh, social justice warriors. But at that time, that was actually like, for me, I felt like I don't see what's bad about that. You know what I mean? Because like somebody has to fight for people's liberation. And this is why knowledge is power. When I was able to put words to my experiences, I was able to develop the context to understand what I was experiencing. And when I learned history, I developed an even greater context to what was going on. And I was able to understand, one, most individuals are not actually my enemies. Systems are my enemies. Those systems were created by individuals. If someone is operating from those systems, then that person has put themselves in opposition to me. And that's a problem, obviously. But when I'm not engaging with those people, I am able to have compassion and empathy for their plight, because I understand that they are not sovereign people and that they are mentally, emotionally, spiritually enslaved by the demonic shadow empire, by these 5 pillars of ideological colonization. You understand? And it is still an experience of violence, and I can still feel upset about it. But I don't have to live in that as if it's the truth, because I have a greater context to understand, this is not the truth. This is not reality. This is a false reality. And this is why I refer to the social matrix that is created by these 5 pillars as the false matrix. It's not real. And I know for myself, when I'm engaging with people who have decided to be decolonial abolitionists, who've decided to be anti-racist, who've decided to deconstruct these divisive weapons, these divisive mechanisms, these divisive machinations, when I'm with those people, I feel free. I tap into infinity with those people. But this is why I say I do my best to not engage with mundanes. I do my best to not interact if I can help it. But I certainly do not develop intimate relationships with mundanes, because I'm just going to experience harm. It's just going to drag me down. It's just going to be a karmic relationship. Because if they're still living in a finite perspective, they're still living in a 2-dimensional perspective of us versus them. And this is I think this is something that's important for me to say. When I started developing this consciousness, I definitely shared about it online. I have been, that is one of the things that I was known for, was my social advocacy work. And that actually was a lot of the work that I did for a while. And, ooh, this is quite dark, isn't it? I don't love that for us. But that's a lot of the work that I was doing. And this is important to understand. Take it as it applies and apply it to your life. But I'm talking about this Ace of Wands in reverse and this Knight of Pentacles. So stick with me. Like I said, there are a lot of downloads. My throat chakra was like feeling really weighed down. So as a neurodivergent person, one of my love languages is sharing about my hyperfixations and the things that I've learned, because I'm so excited about what I've learned, and I feel like you're gonna want to know it too. And like, this is like changing my life. This is such a big deal. And I remember the moment that like one of my childhood best friends, I've talked about this relationship on this platform, like her mom like basically turned off her heart light to me. I was like super excitedly explaining all of this stuff that I was learning, and I could definitely sense her starting to become agitated, but I didn't know why. And over time, I came to realize that the reason why was because she felt like, well, one, maybe she felt guilty, although I don't think that that's what it is, but I feel like she felt like I was like painting her as the enemy and that she should feel guilty, which was not true at all, whatsoever. I have come to realize things that like, I don't really need to get into that right now, but yeah, and definitely turned off her heart light towards me. I felt it in that moment, and never. I was 18 and I was friends with this person and still like around them until I think I was like 28, 27. So 9 years. And of being like, you know, gradually more and more excluded, othered and alienated more and more over time, and like just she would like bring up things that were frankly racialized and very like inappropriate, and yeah, it was like, I guess like she felt attacked because I was explaining these things that I had learned. And I was explaining them because they brought me great liberation. Like, I had hated myself so much, and then I realized like, oh, it's because I grew up in a racist place and experienced a lot of covert racism that I didn't even realize. You know, like a lot of microaggressions, a lot of, and as I said, sometimes like outright aggression, but like alienation and othering. I also experienced a lot of misogyny. I experienced a lot of homophobia, xenophobia, like all of these things. And I didn't have any words. I didn't know what was happening. And I hated myself, you know, also ableism as a neurodivergent person. And I just felt like, you know, I had to get out of that community because I knew that there was more out there. I knew there were people like me out there because of the internet. And I knew that if I got away from those people, I'd be able to find them. But yeah, I learned that, and once again, I didn't have words for this until recently. I learned that if I was a pro-Black person, if I was anti-racist, if I was a decolonial abolitionist, which I have to be in order to love myself. I must be those things. I cannot love myself otherwise. That is a non-negotiable. It's not possible because I have been indoctrinated to hate myself. So I must enact those as praxis in order to actively love myself. So I learned that if I were to actively love myself, I would not be loved unconditionally by these people. I would be tolerated and endured on the surface, but yeah, I'm not somebody like, they don't want me around. I'm no longer part of the community, basically. Okay. And I already had I'd had that experience anyway in the family of origin, which I'm just letting y'all know, moving forward, I'm going to refer to them as the cult that I was raised in, because I don't consider them my family and they are a cult. So the cult that I was raised in, that's what I came to realize. And because I never wanted to face the truth about this. I never wanted to face the truth because I never wanted the structures of some of the best relationships I had in childhood, which says a lot, right? It says a lot that those were the best relationships that I had in childhood. I didn't want to lose those things because it just would mean that my life was even worse than I thought it had been. And it was already terrible, frankly. But that has been keeping me in a prison. And so as I developed social consciousness, I was able to recognize these things. And developing social consciousness gave me, and racial consciousness, gender consciousness. Developing gender consciousness is being a kid and thinking, oh, there are boys and there are girls. And you develop gender consciousness, and you understand that sex and gender are two different things. You understand that there's actually intersex people. You understand that pre-colonial societies generally had more than two genders. You understand those things when you develop gender consciousness. You then also understand cis-heteropatriarchy. What does that even mean? You know what I mean? That I learned in women's studies before I took sociology or women and gender studies. Or may have been gender and sex studies, but either way, whatever. So this is why they don't want people to have knowledge. They don't want people to have access to information. They don't want you to be able to read, and they're going to do anything to distract. But I've said this before on here. And I speak as a person who lives in America and was born in America and raised in America due to displacement because of colonization. So in America, the literacy rates are so bad, most American adults are barely functionally literate. Those are the statistics the last time I checked. And the next time I get on here, I will have checked the most recent literacy statistics. But this was, I think, within the last 4 years. I think actually it's the last 2 years I checked. Maybe 3. But most American adults are barely functionally literate, and most of them cannot read a subway map. Now, if you grew up in a community that is largely middle class or higher, or you grew up in a major city, this may seem insane to you. But then we remember that the United States is vast, and most of it is rural and suburbs, and most people are not actually middle class. Most people are working class and poor, or lower middle class, meaning if they miss a paycheck, they will probably go into debt. And having access to go into debt might be a buffer for a little while, but leave it long enough and they will have dropped a class, a tax bracket, if you will. Okay, these are the statistics. I actually have a zine that I created about this. I guess I'm gonna upload more of that stuff to the Etsy shop, but I have a zine that I made about this called Manifest Destiny. That is about my time in Los Angeles. And yeah, I'm going to put that in the Etsy shop. People can purchase if they want, because my website is under construction. But yeah, having that consciousness, having this awareness and this information, lets me know what is real and what isn't. And a lot of what people generally think, especially in liberal bubbles that exist around major cities. As I said, I grew up outside of Washington, D.C. I live in New York. I've lived in New York almost all of my adult life. And when I wasn't in New York, like I was in other major cities, except for I did spend a year in a smaller city. But yeah, so this is all to say, coming back to my point about like black or white thinking is a sign of mental illness and or a personality disorder, because it shows that you are trapped in your lower mind. You are trapped in your survival mind, your primal mind. We have a frontal lobe for a reason. If you are not able to have sophisticated thought, it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to problem solve, because problem solving exists in the frontal lobe. And this is one of the things that really upsets me about grade school teachers. Instead of wondering why a student might be unable to show up for their work, and considering that maybe there might be something that's keeping them in their basal ganglia, their reptilian mind, they just, I feel, punish a lot of times, just punish them and shame them, and these sorts of things. It's really unfortunate. My experience and a lot of other people's experiences is like the vast majority of school teachers are like that. Thankfully for me, I had to take early childhood psychology when I was training to become a teacher. But yeah, like I remember in my in-school, like on-site training, I was working with a 7th grade art teacher because I wanted to teach 7th graders art, because that's the year that I became depressed. Trigger warning, I started experiencing SI when I was in 7th grade. And I wanted to help children to be able to use creativity to express themselves, to be able to tap into their feelings so that they would not have that same sort of experience, if I could help them in that way. And I remember I gave them a task of sketchbooks, and I would give them a task of what they were going to do in their sketchbook for that week, and then they come back and we talk about what was in their sketchbook. And one of them, it was very, what she wrote in her sketchbook, what became clear to me was that she was depressed and she was experiencing some sort of disenfranchisement, if you will. And I told the teacher that I was shadowing, and she told me, oh, you need to tell her that that is inappropriate. And that was, I think, the breaking point where I was, first of all, the teacher encouraged me not to become a teacher. She is a Black woman. And the other teacher that she was super close to was the math teacher. She was also a Black woman. And they both told me not to become a teacher. That is where dreams go to die. If I want to be an artist, don't become a teacher. And but the thing that in conjunction with her telling me to tell that little girl that writing that in her sketchbook, which is that is what the task, that's what it was there for, was inappropriate. I knew that I was not going to be able to have the kind of impact on humanity, especially children, that I wanted to have if I became a teacher. Timeline jumping. But also, I was keeping myself small by trying to become a teacher anyway. I was trying to play it safe. I know that I'm not supposed to be a teacher. Everybody knows that, I think. If you meet me, I'm not supposed, that's, what are you doing here? That's the question. You feel me? And that's literally what they told me. So, like I said, most children are not well equipped. Most people are not well equipped to go deep, but we have to be able to go deep. We have to be able to look at ourselves within the context. This is what cosmic wellness is about. We have to be able to look at ourselves within the context of our existence. We didn't just we don't exist, nothing exists in a vacuum. And I know that there is that 𝗂𝗪 quote that everyone thinks is so funny. I don't think that it's funny, actually. I don't think that any of this is funny. I don't think that any of this is a joke. And I'm not going to laugh about it because these are real human lives that are at stake here. So other people can do what they want, but I don't think that's funny. But that is true, though. We didn't just come out of nowhere. We didn't just spring out of the ground fully formed and there's nothing else. And to think that, to not be willing to even consider the context of your existence in conjunction to, not in contrast to, but in conjunction with the greater collective is egomania. It is insanity. And that is what puts people on the spectrum of psychopathy. And that's why I'm trying to tell you, like, it is indicative of a personality disorder. I'm going to shut the window because it's super loud. There's a garbage truck outside, and I think that says everything about, like, what we're talking about, you know? Yeah. So, all of that is just really, like, the things that we're still holding on to. Like, we had to hit rock bottom with all of this stuff. You know, I had to hit rock bottom with those relationships. I'm not in communication or contact or relation to any of the people from my past whatsoever. But those were karmic dynamics that were still playing out in my life, you know, and I do feel like the past few months has been a lot of, you know, being presented with opportunities to break the cycle. You know what I mean? Like, being afraid to express my needs because I don't want to be a burden, or I am afraid that, like, I will get in trouble if I express my needs, because that's what used to happen to me as a child. So I would just swallow it and be hyper independent. I don't fucking do that anymore. Closed mouths don't get fed. You feel me? And that's just going to create resentment. So it's not a helpful, useful way to live one's life, you know? Just extending way too much empathy to people who are, like, causing harm. Like, oh, because I understand what it's like to, like, be unwell, and I understand, like, why they are the way they are. I can understand why they are the way that they are, and I can have compassion and empathy for that, but it doesn't mean that I have to put up with it. We should never be allowing people to disrespect us. And people feel that they can disrespect us because we disrespect ourselves. And not stopping people from disrespecting us is a form of disrespect to ourselves. I really have to say that. For me, it's really at a point, there's not going to be a conversation. We're not going to talk about it. Because you know what you did. You know what you did, you know what you're doing. You can tell when somebody is just unaware of themselves versus people who are actively choosing to be problematic. That type of shit, I don't fuck with. You will never see me again. You will never hear from me again. And if you do see me, I'm at the point in my life where you didn't see me, actually. That's how I meet disrespect. There's not going to be a conversation. Especially if I already gave you opportunities to get your shit together. That's first of all, right? Now, in terms of people who it's like they're just unaware, it's important, and this is a case-by-case basis, it is context. It's important to consider, am I going to put up with this? Do I have do I want to have to deal with this person not knowing, not being aware? Do I want to have to put up with them having to learn? And the thing is, most of the time, people are not going to learn. You know, when they're adults, most people, by the time that they become an adult, they've already decided who they're going to be. It's very rare to find people who are adaptable and willing to change and to grow as a person. It's very rare. Which I think that's a trauma response as well, but like most things are a trauma response. It's like, bro, take accountability. And this goes back to what I was saying about like being accountable and willing to be wrong and willing to like make a mistake and learn from it and change. But that's why most people never become great. That's why you see people who are like, you know, you hear people who are successful business owners say that they had many failed attempts before finally things worked. You know, look at Lana Del Rey. How many names did she have and like styles of music that she was putting out? Lizzie Grant. I think she had a name before that as well. I don't remember. But she had a very different look and a very different sound before she became Lana Del Rey and makes the music that you now hear. That's a character. We try out a lot of characters before we land on the one that's successful, you know? Trying to think of other people. I don't know, I guess maybe even Kesha, you know? Like Kesha is her music is very different than when she first came out. And I don't think that it's because she's sold out or anything. I think that she like has found herself more. I would not include people like Miley Cyrus and Justin Bieber in that, just because I think that they are the victims of MK Ultra, and like they've been through so much like abuse like that. I don't think that that is a natural progression whatsoever, what happens with those people. But yeah, so that's what this Ace of Wands in reverse is about. That's what this Knight of Pentacles is about. It's about distractions. Yeah, I do feel like the desire to distract ourselves is like really high right now. I feel like temptation is really present right now. And I feel like that is because, and also that a lot of the distractions are things that will drag us down into a negative frame of mind, or like a destructive, not beneficial, not helpful at all frame of mind. And I think that that is really important to be aware of, because this is a time where, like I said yesterday, we had Mars conjunct Jupiter in the 6th house. There's a lot of growth and understanding that like when we hit rock bottom, like that is so that we will so that we can build a foundation on the truth. And that came in like on a solid foundation, right? Because if you build your life on lies, you're just gonna have you're gonna keep having tower moments. But if you are clear-eyed, looking at the world around you for what it is and knowing the truth, you can build a solid foundation. And this is why we do spiritual abolition in this practice in the Aetherium. We do spiritual abolition because it liberates our minds from the chains that bind. And it allows us to experience infinity. And when we are tapped into the infinite, so much prosperity comes to us, not just in terms of money or material gain, but also in our relationships, in our experiences, in our lifestyle. And this is the thing, is like, you know, people are miserable this day and age, and no wonder. But you know, part of it is we gotta level up out of this binary opposition, this two-dimensional way of thinking. You know, sometimes I think, oh, my life sucks. Like, this is the worst situation I've been in my whole life. Or like, yeah. But when I actually think about it, that's not true. Like, when I actually think about it, because like, yeah, my money is fucked up, extremely fucked up. Like, I haven't been in a relationship in a really long time. And I'm going through all of these tower moments in terms of like my relationships. But most of those relationships, like, the tower moment already happened. I'm just processing it. And yes, it sucks and it's heartbreaking, and like, I cry a lot about these things because it's fucking awful. You know what I mean? It really hurts. But it's in service of me getting free, and that's invaluable. You know what I mean? Like, that's completely invaluable. And before, I was ignorant. Before, I was actively abusing substances. I didn't know what was going on. I was like in a very self-destructive like mindset and way of being. I was in all of these abusive relationships, like, and I'm not in that anymore. So anything moving forward is going to be better than what was before. It is always, that is always the truth. And the reality is, like, when I really think about it, like, that's that extreme thinking that is so just like not helpful. It's not helpful at all. And I definitely see a lot of people getting into that extreme thinking right now. Multiple people that I talked to yesterday are in that extreme thinking and catastrophizing. And Spirit is just saying, like, it's not helpful. It's degenerative, actually. Oh, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. I'm, as a Sagittarius sun in tropical astrology, Sag rising in sidereal astrology, like, that, I know that we can be hyperbolic, but it's not helpful. Like, we have to be realistic and we have to be grounded. You see, that's my Capricorn, my Saturn placements with the Cap rising in sidereal, tropical astrology, Aquarius moon, but I am Capricorn moon in sidereal astrology, with the Four of Cups in reverse. Like, this kind of indoctrination that you were like inculcated with, you have to let that go. You know what I mean? Like, you have to let that go. It's not serving you. It's not serving anybody, actually, because helping to perpetuate and sustain the sickness in these communities is actually harmful to those people. Right? It's harmful to enable people who are sick. It's just like it's harmful to give money to a crackhead and you should just give them food. You know what I mean? I had a download in the shower, and the download was basically like, yeah, you know, I look at situations and I try to see myself in it. And I try to see, like, because everybody is a reflection of me, like, have I been this way? What can I learn from this? Like, how is my own behavior being reflected back to me? And it's not always a one-to-one. Sometimes it's like, yeah, I've been like that before. And other times it's like, I have to break a karmic cycle of engagement. But I realized something today is like, even if I was like that in the past, even if I was doing certain things, like when I was active in substance abuse, I was not the best version of myself in relationships, and I definitely let people down and I caused harm, and especially to myself, but definitely to the people who loved me. And what I have done, what I realize is like, that may be so, but that was the past. I don't do that anymore. And why don't I do that? Because people stopped putting up with it. You know what I mean? People took a hard line against dealing with my bullshit. You know, some people still, 5 years from my last drink, you know, some people still do not fuck with me. If they see me out, they don't say nothing to me. Still, you know, I really have to say it's a week out from the Lionsgate portal. And that means it's also, it's a week out from the Lionsgate portal, and we have a full moon in a few days, in 4 days, on the 19th. I'm recording this on the 15th of August. It's my niece's birthday. Say happy birthday to my niece. But we're on the other side of the looking glass. The 19th is going to be that final outcome with the full moon in Aquarius in opposition to the sun in Leo. The moon will be in the 12th house, the sun will be in the 6th house. By the time Virgo season hits, it's going to be like a whole different ball game. Things are going to be very different. And you're going to be very different because this, I said, it's about patterns and behaviors, right? Don't bring those old mindsets and that old consciousness into this new beginning and this new way of being. You got to check that stuff. Use subliminals. Subliminals have changed my life. It's completely rewired my subconscious mind. You know, people are responsible for the harm that they did to us, but we're responsible for our healing. So it's like I said, like, and a lot of folks distract themselves from doing the healing because they don't want to face that stuff. It's hard. There are things that I was facing about like my past behavior this week that it was just so cringeworthy, beyond cringeworthy. Like, it really hurt for me to face that. And luckily I have people in my life where I like tell these things to them, because I'm in recovery. So I have people in my life that I can like tell these things that I'm so ashamed of that I did. And once I tell someone, it weakens its power over me. And that gives once I get it out of me, that gives a little light for God to get in, for the Holy Spirit, for the higher self to get in. But if all that shit is still up inside of me, then it's still up inside of me, making me sick. And I don't want to be sick anymore. I don't want to feel that way anymore. So I have to let that stuff go. I have to let that shame go. Sure, I should feel shamed about, like, there's a healthy level of shame. Like, I should feel bad about like causing harm. But as long as I atone and I stop doing those things and I'm genuinely remorseful and I make it right, I don't need to live in that shame. Like I said, people took a hard line against my harmful behavior. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, people took a hard line against it. Not everybody. Some people didn't feel like I was that bad because they just didn't know the half of it. But like when it started getting like very obvious is when I was just like, this is humiliating. I can't live like this anymore. And yeah, I don't do those things anymore. I've become a different person. Sometimes what people need in terms of karma is for you to take a hard line against them. And that doesn't mean that you're like, fuck you, I want you to die type shit. It's just like, that's intolerable, and I will not put up with it, period. There's nothing wrong with that. You got to know where your limitations are, your standards, your boundaries. You got to know what those are, and you have to respect them for yourself. You feel me? And we're learning and we're growing over time, and it is a process that we will always be in, this spiritual maturation, emotional maturation. But the moment that we become willing, we get put on this path, and there's no turning back, and there's really no stopping. If you get called to the path of transformation, you better just ride that shit out. Be super willing to do anything that you have to do, because the sooner that you do it, the sooner that you come out on the other side. All right, there's a 4-year cycle that's ending for a lot of us. Thank God. I think it'll finally be over by the Great Conjunction. But honestly, I feel like it's probably like, yeah, I think it's going to be finally like really complete dregs by then. But I genuinely feel that by the time September hits, I'm hearing like nothing was the same. Okay. So Plutus was the Greek god of wealth, abundance, and riches. He was the daughter of Demeter, which meant that he was the brother of Persephone. And it was believed that he could attract wealth and fortune to people's lives. I'm going to do some research about this because he was considered to be the son of the god Zeus and the goddess Persephone. That doesn't even make any sense. Demeter. See, this is why you gotta cross-check things, because some people just be on some type of stuff. Not everything you can believe on the internet, you feel me? But it's been coming up a lot in the ethers, and so I am gonna do some research, and I'm gonna make a video about Plutus. Like I said, I wanted to talk about the demonic shadow empire, and we did. I do feel like those seed points are being disintegrated right now. Queen of Wands in the reverse position, Two of Cups in the reverse position, and that's all being removed from us. These blockages to manifesting our prosperity and abundance in the here and now, the materialization of all of that is coming to an end. But yeah, I think that by the 19th we can expect some really great news. So if you're not watching this video when I am recording it and posting it, that is 4 days from now. So I would say expect it within the next week to be in the next week or so, to be in a very different place. Like, a lot of change is coming with this full moon in Aquarius in 4 days. So if, like I said, if you're watching and it's not around this time, it's either going to be the next full moon for you, the next Aquarius season, sun in Aquarius, or it's going to be within the next 4 to 8 days is what I'm picking up. But you just have to let go of the past, old ways of doing things that were toxic. You know what I mean? Toxic behaviors. You have to let go of that. And I do feel, like I said, the Hierophant in reverse. That is taking us out of our sovereignty. And I do feel for a lot of folks, it's allowing things to happen in our lives, being passive, like not showing up authentically, just letting life happen to you and then being mad about it when it's happening. And it's like, well, you didn't ever advocate for yourself. How are people supposed to know your needs if you don't ever share them? You know, invite people to actually show up for you. And then if they don't, then sure, that's something. But if you never give people the opportunity to show up and you just expect people to know what you want when you want it, I can tell you one thing: most people are not mind readers. Yes, everyone is empathetic, like everybody has empathy, like, but most people are not mind readers. And yes, you can read body language and shit, but like if you are a self-sovereign grown-ass adult and you're not expressing your needs and then you're just expecting people to pick that shit up, that's a trauma response. That's irresponsible and it's nasty, toxic behavior. All right, we're done with this shit. That has to do with the Libra energy. We have on the 9th, there's the 31st of August through the 9th of September, we have a huge like divine feminine like congregation in the sign of Libra with dark moon Lilith and south node in the 9th house. Well, not in the 9th house, excuse me. The chart I'm looking at is in the 9th house. But like with south node and Libra, like stop being passive. If you want what you want, we have the north node in Aries. Chiron is in Aries right now. If you want what you want, you have to go after it. You have to use your voice. You have to use your power, your energy to get it. Stop just waiting around for life to happen to you and then being mad when it doesn't. Take accountability for your life. Take responsibility. You're grown. You feel me? You're grown. It's called self-sabotage. And we don't need to give the demonic shadow empire any more help. All right, I know that there's a crossroads energy, but choose yourself. Choose love, unconditional love and unconditional truth, and that will always bring you higher into Christ consciousness, which is going to liberate you from the confines of the demonic shadow empire. Okay? And that is why I can say that even though I don't like everybody, and in fact, some people, you know, sometimes I feel hate, but feelings aren't facts. I don't like everybody, but I sure do actually love everyone unconditionally because I understand the human condition. That is what context has given me. I have a bird's eye view because I get out of the problem and look down at it, and that's solution-oriented thinking. With Jupiter and Gemini, it's going to be a lot of like black or white thinking, a lot of binary opposition, a lot of like getting too bogged down in the details and becoming myopic. And you just want to fight against that with everything that you have. Continue to remember the greater context, because that's what's going to liberate you. And that's how you're going to get the money that you want, that you're looking for, you know. So take action right now while they're not in an exact conjunction, while Jupiter and Mars are still conjunct. In a separating conjunction, Mars is moving away from Jupiter. Once it gets to about 20 degrees, it will no longer be in that conjunction energy. We have Fortuna here. So be discerning about who you're sharing your ideas with in the 5th house. Be creative, like do everything that you need to do to get like your ideas popping, because don't let yourself get bogged down. Oh, it didn't work in the past. Like you weren't around, you didn't have the right relationships in the past. You are finding those relationships. Don't go around telling everyone your ideas, but be discerning and let your spirit ask God to show you who it is you're supposed to be talking to. You know, God, your ancestors, angels, spirit guides, ask them to reveal to you, or whoever. I don't know. Ask the Most High. Let's just leave it at that. Ask the Most High Divine Creator who is for you to share with, and be discerning about who not to, and y'all build together. Take initiative, take action, because I promise you there will be a massive investment, return on an investment. Okay, stay away from those old karmic relationships and dynamics, and just give everything that you've got into that. I promise you right now that is going to be helpful. So yeah, Mars moving about 3 degrees. Let me pull up a chart that like Or anyway, I can just progress the chart like a week and see where we're at and progress it back. Yeah, so we have about a week of them being in close proximity together, a 4-degree difference, I would say. So use this week wisely, okay? Use the next 7 days wisely to really to continue manifesting. 5 to 7 days, continue like really pouring yourself into your manifestation practice and not allowing any of that negative self-talk, self-limiting beliefs, self-sabotage, toxic behavior. Don't let any of that like stop you or get stuck. It's like I'm seeing tar, but that reminds me of Artax when in the swamp of sadness, I guess. And Artax, his horse was sinking, and he's like, Artax, you're sinking. Don't let the swamp get you, Artax. I think that's a never-ending story. Knight of Wands. Exactly. I can't make this shit up. Queen of Swords. I can't make this shit up, bro. Those old karmic relationships, it's dead. Fast forward movement, bro. Yeah. Have faith. Have faith, because this is the path that if you're following the path that's been put in your heart, if you're following the divine plan, then have faith that all of the chains that bound you, that's over and done. Okay, you're coming out of hiding, you're coming back into the world. I know you probably hear that a lot and it's super annoying, but it's for real. It's for real. I love you all truly and deeply. I hope that this was helpful. I know this was a long one, but we did have a lot that needed to be communicated. And yeah, I'll see you on the flip side, hopefully sometime this week. But like I said, subscribe. Also like, comment, share. Subscribe to this reading. Subscribe to this YouTube if it feels like the right place for you. But also subscribe to the mysteries. The link is in the description box below. If you want a really comprehensive, in-depth, weekly and monthly insights delivered to your email inbox on a weekly and monthly basis. And yeah, book a session with me, book a reading, or like purchase a reading. I do astrology, I do tarot, I do Akashic records, but it's always best to book an oracle healing session with me. And you can also book self-sovereignty guidance sessions. I don't like the language of coaching, so it is I used to call it cosmic wellness coaching, but it is self-sovereignty guidance. And I'm your guide and your support. I don't want to be one of those like, I'm a guru, I'm a coach type people. But basically it's a package of oracle healing sessions, and each one builds upon the last, and we build together. It's very comprehensive, very powerful and empowering. And I think that you would really like the results. To get a taste of that, watch any of my energy healing videos, and I'll see you on the flip side. I love you all truly and deeply. Peace.